God has so many ways that He can speak to His people, and so many ways that He can get His message across to us. God chose one of those ways to speak to me over a year ago. It was February a year ago that God spoke to me in the night about Burma. I was asleep, and this, if it's easy for you to think about it like this, it was a night vision. Mark and I were flying through the air on the wings of the Holy Spirit. His voice was here between us. Mark was on one side, and the Holy Spirit was here, and we're flying through the air. I know that sounds crazy, but you know, God does awesome things. But anyway, we were carried away in the Spirit, and as we began to come upon land, we began to come upon a seashore, and I saw the beach and the seashore area, and we landed there, and we began to walk on this beach area. I saw the sand and the little sprigs of grass as they were coming up. I looked out across a field toward the edge, the tree line, the edge of the jungle there, and I didn't see anybody. And then I looked back again toward the seashore where we had come from. Saw the little dirt road as it wound around the beach area. I saw an old vehicle of some kind, dusty, and I saw a few structures of some kind, little buildings, but there were no people around anywhere. And I remember asking, where are the people at? This is so strange. Where are the people at? And I looked back again across this field toward the jungle, and a few people started coming out toward us. It was about, I don't know, 8 or 12 people started walking toward us. As they got closer, I could see their faces very clearly. And I could tell they were Asian by the way they looked. Their skin was a little darker than mine. Their eyes were different, and some of them had on the little pointed hat things. And I just knew that, you know, I knew them by the way they looked. We went with them to one of the homes there in the area. And we were in this home. There were several people there, and some of the adults there in this home tried to hand me a jar of food. And you'll have to forgive me because I get a little teary-eyed when I talk about it. But anyway, they handed me a jar of food. It looked like they had canned. And I didn't want to take it from them. I tried to hand it back, and I said, no, I've got plenty of food. You need your food. And they said, no, we can grow food. We need something else. I know now that I'm awake what that something else is. But as the adults started talking among themselves, I saw a little girl about this high. She was about, I don't know, 8 or 10 years old. And I bent down and I handed her that jar of food. And I said, here, baby, you go sneak this back in on your shelf in here where your food is at. She went around behind me and she started toward the next room. And I could see into that room and that little shelf that she was going to put that jar of food on. And there wasn't much on that shelf. But she was willing to share. They were so willing to share what they had. The next thing we went to another home, the little, real simple little homes there. And Mark and another man or two had stretched out their hand as they were going to pray for this tall, slender lady. She had her hands folded in front of her, and they were stretching out their hands to pray for her. And I could tell just by watching, she couldn't understand what they were saying. And I remember saying this to Mark, she doesn't understand us. We're actually going to need an interpreter so that she knows what we're saying. But again, she was Asian in her look, her features were Asian. Then we walked outside and we walked down a trail. I can see the trail now, the foliage all around the jungle. We walked through the jungle. We came upon a river. And I remember in my mind, I was thinking there was something a bit unsafe about this water. Mark had stepped off in it, and I just remember being a little bit concerned about him being off in that water. He was okay, of course. He got up and he was talking the whole time. He got out of the water, but the thing that stuck in my mind is that I was just concerned because everywhere we had gone so far, we were very careful, very, very careful about how we walked and how we stepped in the area. But anyway, the next thing I knew, we were back on the beach area again, and I knew it was time to go home. We were back at the very place where we had landed in the beginning. And I looked back across the field again, back toward the jungle. And as I looked back, it began to rain, a long, steady downpour of rain. And I know now that that's very significant about the Holy Spirit reigning in that country. And this is the part that woke me up. Very loudly, I heard the Spirit saying over and over and over, Burma, Burma, over and over. And that's what woke me up. I sat up and I asked Mark, where's Burma? Where is Burma? What is Burma? Now, I did like most of you. I took my geography lessons when I was in high school, but Burma was not one of those countries that stood out in my mind. You know, India stood out, Africa stands out. A few countries stand out, but that one was not one that stood out in my mind, so I wasn't real sure where it was at. I was crying. When I woke up, I was crying. I was so moved by this vision. I went to our library and I pulled out our encyclopedia and I opened it up to see where Burma was at. And I saw it. In our encyclopedias, they're several years old, they still had the name Burma on the maps. Myanmar was not on there in these particular maps. Or maybe it was on just a little small part, but Burma was still there. And so we found out where it was located and we immediately began to search. How are we going to help? How are we going to help this country? And that's my vision. And I feel like it's the voice of the Lord that woke me up with this Burma. And after this vision, it wasn't but a few months after this that Hillary Clinton took a trip into Burma. It had been the first time that a delegate, one of our delegates had got to go into that country in years and years and years. And I feel like it's God's way of saying, it's time. The country is opening up and it's time for the gospel to go in.